ain't sunny New Orleans, I'll tell you that much. I tell you, if I was back in Exclusion County, now there's a fine lady by the name of Shirley that lives there. Very attractive, I say.
Hey man, we're making one big score, and then we're gonna get free, man. Isn't that how we wanted it, man?
Well, as your attorney, I would say take a left there. Yeah, it's down this road. There we are. Yeah, it's somewhere around here. Some of the best cocaine you can find anywhere out there.
Hey man, we're big time. This is Billy the Kid here. This is Captain America.
Captain America.
We played all the fairgrounds.
Well, it's good to meet you.
Cool.
It's amazing we can do this kind of stuff while we're going 80 miles an hour.
Whoa, man.
Yeah.
Whoa,
what?
man.
Oh, it looks like we're getting near the...
We gotta get out of here, man.
Hey, I know that guy. That ain't no county man. That's the pusher man. That's the pusher. You ain't scaring me, pusher! Come on, let's show him what we got, boys. Let's show this pusher what we got. Stones in their eyes. for joining us this August 2019. We'll be right back in a minute. Yeah, Sam! Down there! Oh, the Bushman! I'm saying, got my ear. Oh, the Bushman! The Bushman! Oh, the Bushman! Creaky. I'll just do some adjustments here, and yeah. How's everyone doing out there? Got a very interesting show tonight.
It sure sounds like it.
Rich Reese, our musical director, on the drums.
That's
of
right.
course. And oh, look at this. We have a phone call already, just like that. Let me check this out here.
This would be a good time for me to get into some cheese.
Hello, this is Jeff Dodge. You've reached the Peasant Revolution Band Variety Hour.
The rhythm section that sticks together. Thank you.
Hello, who is this? Can I get who is this?
Okay, yeah, you're right. I better take a couple of crackers.
Oh my, you guys, it's Rick Perry. Rick Perry, the governor of Texas?
That's correct. As well as
He's the Secretary of Energy.
in charge of the environment.
He's in charge of the environment.
Yeah.
So, not energy, but environment secretary. Is that what you are?
Well, yeah. Well, we recently, there's been a string of attacks. A bunch of hacking that's been going on.
Hacking? Are you prepared for all this technological warfare?
Well, yes, we've located the hackers.
Where are they?
The hackers are underwater.
The hackers are
We
underwater.
believe them to be, form of hacking underwater.
Can you hack things underwater? Is that like even a computer thing? I'm so glad the Secretary of Environmentalism is worrying about this.
Well, yeah, because hacks from underwater happen every day.
Okay. I seem to remember this kind of logic during the war on drugs.
We'll see. They train
I
dolphins.
don't need to be a dick about it.
The U.S., but other countries
Totally
have trained dolphins.
Other countries have trained dolphins that are hacking our computers. Is that what you're saying, Governor
He
Rick
was a
Perry?
sound guy for a while.
They're hacking our computers.
There's not wearing them there, but yeah,
Trained dolphins.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but I got to get back to business.
Well, thank you for calling in, Governor Rick Perry. That is great news, and God bless you. You guys are doing Great job with the environment there. Thank you. Thank you for all your service. The service like that. Goodbye. Well, Governor Rick Perry. What do you know? What do you know? But anyways,
Right.
the director of the environment, as you were saying, there's been such interesting news lately, Rich. Like, I've noticed, do you remember that...
Can we get a close-up here? He is the United States Secretary of Energy.
Secretary of Energy, not the environment.
Yeah, but that's okay. You know, ever since I got laid off from the Oregon Journal, I've been, trying to be a fact checker elsewhere.
What was your Oregon Journal years? Was that right at the end?
Oh, yeah, it was like 72 to 79.
Okay.
Yeah. And,
so you saw it all come down.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was, as soon as they tore out Harbor Drive, we really didn't have anywhere to go.
Those liberal bastards, Oregonian. They took your job.
Motherfuckers.
On that note, in the news this week, aside from Governor Rick Perry, is also I don't know if you heard about this Epstein thing, but these guys we do their music.
The guy from the Beatles?
Yeah, the Beatles guy. So we do their music a lot, and they had this manager, and he committed suicide.
What?
Yeah, and what's weird is he wasn't even in prison. He committed suicide. It's like he wasn't even in jail on pedophile charges or something.
Was it like ethically
know.
sourced veal? Where it's like the veal commits suicide because it's depressed?
Right, I've heard that argument.
And then you can sell it at Zupans, right? Because it's ethically sourced, because, the veal killed itself.
I thought the veal went to the McDLT. Do you remember the McDLT?
Oh, yeah, the hot side stayed hot, the cool side stayed...
That's
yeah,
right.
Rick Perry designed that, didn't he?
I'm hoping Rick Perry
Secretary
will
of
bring
the
back
Environment.
McDLT. That's a very environmentally... we use lots of styrofoam.
Yeah, we'll
imply lots of Americans with that.
As long as he can keep that Texas minimum wage at the federal minimum wage, which is still only $7.25, maybe there will be a future for the McDLT down there.
Don't let my father hear that. Anyways, on that note, we need to
Fort Worth.
We have a great guest coming up, ladies and gentlemen. The a wonderful. Well, actually, wait. Let me do a little. We got a quick little thing I got to say here. This is Jamila and I were out at an Airbnb recently, and I don't know if you go to the Airbnbs much, Rich.
Sure, it's the libertarian paradise.
It's like the Libertarian Hotel, I think.
Right. It's like if you've got property, you can, get some money off of it.
Well, and we're thinking about being here in the neighborhood that we're at,
Well, did I tell you, I bought, like, an entire complex of low-income apartments, and now I'm just using it all for Airbnb. I don't know, did you know that?
I didn't.
No, it's doing so well. That's why I'm sponsoring this show.
I might stay.
Yeah, it's like $200 a night.
Good.
And don't mind the homeless people milling about. They're just the former residents.
I'm probably related to some of them.
So where did you guys...
my sponsor was here. We stayed at the. It is the. They're having this festival. It's in Walla Walla. Huachika Festival. They got Yola Tanga, Ala Las, Purple Mountains Destroyer. Robin Hitchcock. That's
Robin
I don't know
Hitchcock.
If you all remember Robin Hitchcock, but
he might have a little trouble getting his band into the country.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the Egyptians, right?
He did the In a World of Frogs is him, right? That's a great song. Love that.
Yeah,
anyways,
Jordan Peterson, I think, would have some words. No, Alex Jones.
Oh, Alex Jones doesn't like him, or they're friends?
Oh, that's what I'm not sure.
Oh, the frog thing.
Yeah.
Right. So, in a world of frogs, in a world of Alex Jones frogs, you might find this festival going on in Walla Walla on this September, I believe it's the 13th, 14th. We're coming right up on it. Anyways, yes.
In September.
It is in September, the 13th, 14th.
So the Palouse.
It's going to be, the Palouse is beautiful. So please visit that festival if you're out there in the area. And they have great bed and breakfast and Airbnbs in there.
Hey, I have a funny story real quick about that area.
Yes.
Okay, I knew this very severe alcoholic when I was myself an alcoholic, when I was in college at the correct age. Anyways, this woman, she had dropped out of Whitman, and we got in a fight. I'm not shitting you. she swore up and down that Whitman College was named after Walt Whitman, and not Marcus and Narcissa, of course. You know, the genocidal folks. Yes. You know, from farther south. So that always sticks in my mind. It's like, okay, well, that's why they kicked you out. But yeah, we just want to make sure where the legacy,
well, there's a tradition of people moving to Oregon that believe what they want to believe, and I think that's a great intro to our next guest. Right after we take this first commercial break with author Kenneth Coleman.
Hey, it's Coach Larry again, and I'm coming at you to talk about this great product, Safford Brothers Downtown Blend, Taste the City Coffee. It's amazing. I've been loving it, and I've been real happy to talk about it now. Everybody wants to know what's going on with Sid, and he's just not ready for prime time. Gotta love that guy for just talking so much about Safford Brothers Downtown Blend Taste the City Coffee. I don't think I would have enjoyed it quite as much if I wasn't thinking about Sid when I'm drinking it. And here's hoping that he can get a comeback going, and come back and start doing ads for Safford Brothers Downtown Blend Taste the City Coffee. It's always good. You'll love it just like I do.
Hey, it's Jimmy Gimmler here for Ear Massage by Rose Cramden. Ear massage is the key to good health. You hear better, you feel better. Plus, Rose is going to trim those ears up, and it's a great tune-up for your whole system. Charts are going to tell you that there's a lot of benefits to ear massage. Why would you settle for regular massage when you can experience Rose Cramden's magic fingers? This massage is going to make you feel better, it's going to help you hear better, it's going to keep you healthy, and it's the best thing you can do for your ear health. Treat your ears good, and you'll feel good.
Daydream Believer.
Well, that would be something else. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so happy to present to you an old friend of ours at the show, and Steve and I in particular. This is his book. If we can get a picture of this, David. Yeah, and this is Dangerous Subjects.
Oh.
This is... we're going to get into this in a little bit, but I'm very curious. Author, our friend, Kenny Cole! Woo! Yeah! Thank you. Kenny Coleman, in the house. Kind of I gave you a new stage name with that there.
Yeah,
That's a serious thing.
Haven't been called by that name in many years, but
Did you ever get that from teachers or anything like that? They just dropped the man.
oh, not the Cole part. No, I get that a lot from fans of fine shoes and handbags.
Okay.
The Kenneth Cole designer.
Kenneth Cole collection.
Yes,
okay.
the Kenneth Cole collection.
Yeah.
Well, didn't you get that with Gucci sometimes, don't you?
Oh, for
Rich
sure.
Gucci.
Yeah, it was the Gucci folks that got me into that stuff. It's great. It's great.
He's not related, but we tried for a while to get them as a sponsor, and it didn't turn out. So I remember you from U of O days, I believe.
That's
Isn't
true.
That where I first met you?
Yes.
Now, I'm with the class of '88 from Portland, Oregon, and you were from
Class of '89 from Aloha, Oregon. We just had our 30th anniversary, which I did not attend.
Okay, class
Because,
of '89, 30th anniversary.
we
Our
have-
sound guy's class of '89.
Okay.
He's from Minnesota, Lindstrom, Minnesota. Class of '89.
I believe Aloha is the town of Aloha is named after a town in Minnesota. also
Okay.
called Aloha and mispronounced to the consternation
Sure.
of
Many Hawaiians.
yes.
Like small Hawaiians?
Uh,
No. Oh, Manny. Okay.
Many.
Gotcha. That's
Yeah.
the drumming.
Manny.
Plural.
Drumming. Yes. Adhering.
and the Polynesians. But so you got to U of O then a year after. I was late there, but this guy wasn't. When did you meet our bass player?
I probably met him the first day I moved into the dorms. He was on the same floor.
No kidding.
So, yeah,
Do you
so I
remember
met-
that, Steve?
Yes.
You remember that day? Remember that
I
day?
think a mattress caught on fire and it was thrown out the window, and
A mattress caught on fire.
no one got hurt. No, not a lot of smoking.
Okay, this is-
inhalation, and,
This is the University of Oregon
Yeah.
where they shot animal house.
Yes, so it didn't disappoint for a young farm boy from the hinterlands of Aloha.
You were impressed.
I was impressed.
Well, that was okay. I'm trying to think of what complex that would have been then. Is that Bean Complex?
It was Hamilton Complex. Robbins was the dorm.
Okay. Hamilton Robbins. Shout out to anyone from
Yes.
that area.
Shout out to Hammies.
The Hammies. So you went to U of O, and I eventually got there in 91 was 92. I did about 2.5 years, and was in a few bands. But we had a mutual friend, Dennison. Weren't you guys in the State Flowers? Was that what it was called, or Pete Fick?
Pete Ficht and Thaddeus played in bands together.
Wasn't there a
Noise Candy.
Noise Candy. That's what I'm trying to think of. Okay. I guess I'm flashing back to a moment where you and him and maybe remnants of Noise Candy did a jam session. I think it was the only time we ever did it in a crowded Northwest rehearsal space. Does that ring a bell?
Spent a lot of crowded Northwest rehearsal spaces in my life, but
I
very well
just
be.
remembered that all of a sudden. There was so much happening in the music scene in the 90s in Portland.
yes, there was.
So where did you go from U of O when I drifted off into all my Portland acts? You graduated in
93 with an English degree.
Okay.
So there were some rough years, suffice it to say.
Any favorite professors we should mention?
The most memorable, do you remember Raphael Falco?
I don't think so. I was a history mostly.
Okay.
I took any English.
Okay, yeah. So he was a very acerbic East Coaster. Taught a class on really violent Elizabethan drama. So I just, but I don't have a lot of memories of
What did you learn out of violent Elizabethan drama?
life.
Techniques? Or?
No techniques, no. Just how to create art out of madness, I suppose.
Okay. A theme that is useful when you study the human story.
Sure, yeah. And I switched to history. I mean,
So
much later.
Did you graduated with a bachelor's in English?
Mm-hmm.
And when did the history bug get at you?
Much later. I was in my late 30s.
Okay. Well, let's come
yeah.
to that in a second. So, but you're out of college from U of O in your
Mm-hmm.
young 20s. Back into the. Did you come back to Portland, or did you stay down there for?
No, I lived in. I lived in Portland.
And what kind of? Where did you go musically at that point? Or generally, like where from the early '90s to late '90s, was there any kind of arc musically that took you anywhere?
No, I actually ended up playing country music.
Okay.
Sort of. I guess you might call it alt country, but it really wasn't. It was just sort of straight ahead country music, which was alt. Which was alt. Any sort of traditional country was considered very strange
Like
and alternative.
the Wilco style?
No, it was more straight ahead than that.
Okay.
More honky tonk
Okay.
than that. So I did that in the mid 90s. Then I actually moved to Texas where I didn't play any country music.
Oh, wow.
I didn't play any music at all in Texas, and then I came back.
Did you go listen to music? Or?
I did. Yeah, I just couldn't get anything going in Texas. Moved back to Portland, played in various bands in the 90s and 2000s.
What part of Texas were you in?
Dallas, Texas.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Now, I just got to recently travel to Austin and do the South by Southwest this year. Dallas and Austin. Did you ever get a chance to visit Austin?
Yeah, many times.
Okay.
Many times.
There seems to be a cultural difference, they say.
Well, there's a lot of hostility towards Dallas that's entirely earned in the rest of Texas. So as I soon learned that I moved to a place that was pretty universally despised by the rest of the state for various reasons, but
too numerous to really.
Too numerous, yeah.
But I'm going to think money and the sort of J.R. Ewing kind of evilness.
Yes, absolutely.
Sure.
Just sort of
Along
soulless sprawl.
That fateful day in 1963, the
Yes.
one was bought off. But,
Yes.
we don't need to talk about that. And so I think that puts us in good shape to take a little commercial break here. But when we come back, we're going to talk to Kenneth Coleman and move into his history phase. Here we go. And thank you for watching the Peasant Revolution Band Variety Hour.
Door to door, boat to boat, cheap white wine, cheap sugar. Yeah, this is a tasty fish. It's brined in like a brand name soy sauce and cheap white wine, cheap sugar, salt, little herbs in there, and it's brined overnight. Let it dry out, form a nice little pellicle, they call it in the biz. Nice sort of protective skin on the membrane, and then we'll smoke it for hours on end and just drink beer and wait. Line cod, barbless line cod, barbless hook, smoking to dry it out. It's get a little smoky flavor. Door to door, boat to boat, free range, line caught, barbless hooked Chinook.
Here's the thing. I gotta tell you, I learned a tough lesson, and now I'm just grateful. It is good to be alive. It's good to be back on making these great commercials for Safford Brothers, Downtown Blend, Taste the City Coffee on the Peasant Revolution Band Variety Hour. I'm just grateful, man. Every breath that I take is about gratitude. It's about being alive. It's about not going so completely crazy that I lose my mind or go insane or try to fly off the top of a building, something that is not going to work. And it's good to be alive, and it's good to be able to sit down and have a cup of Safford Brothers Downtown Blend, Taste the City Coffee. It's always good. It's good. It's good.
And we're back. We're back. And this is a fascinating read. Dangerous Subjects is the story of James D. Saules and the rise of black exclusion in Oregon, which got codified in Oregon history. I always like to give this story that to me, a lot of this is Oregon's typical play it down the middle history and culture, but the Civil War comes about, and really the country was dividing up over what to do with the West is one piece of history, and Manifest Destiny, not to mention the genocide of all the native peoples to get to this point, but the West Coast was getting fought out over the North and South, which would be free states, which would be slave states. And Oregon did its classic thing where it's like, we are not going to be a slave state, but no African Americans can live here. Is that accurate, Reed?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would concur with the read that the Civil War was fought over the expansion of slavery into the West.
Okay.
And I think that's that would be my if I had to go with one cause of that, it was the expansion.
It was
because Lincoln would have been perfectly happy preserving slavery where it was, keeping it quarantined to the South. But the South was concerned about the political representation in the Congress, in the Senate. If there were too many free states, then the legislative branch would then outlaw slavery.
Well,
if there were too many free states.
Well, let's step back even before that. And so I've been hearing this conversation come up more and more, and Trump is a whole nother thing. To the great Andrew Jackson is one of his inspirations. What happened to that $20 bill thing anyway? My point being, though, that some of our presidents ain't so great, and that goes on throughout history. Did the 3/5 part of the Constitution? I've heard debate over that lately. One side saying that the 3/5 was creating better representation for Africans versus none, and yet the South wanted to utilize it to get, because they were diminished in representation of the federal government.
Well, I mean, yes. What the 3/5 clause did was allow Virginia to dominate the presidency and allow pro-slavery a slate of pro-slavery presidents to rule the early republic. I mean, that's so. I don't know how you could argue that the 3/5 clause was a good thing for
I suppose the argument would be
black people.
If it wasn't there, then there'd be no representation or no.
If it wasn't there, the political power of the slave states would have been reduced. Particularly the political power of Virginia and North Carolina and South Carolina would have been drastically reduced, and they probably wouldn't have had as many, presidents coming from Virginia, Monroe.
So it was a Southern origination. The powerful Virginia bureaucrats were trying to get more representation in federal government?
Yes.
And then why would they stop at 3/5 and not try and push it right to the edge of...
Oh, well, that was the compromise. They would have loved to have had. They would have loved to have had 100% had the slaves count for 100% of a person in terms of representation of votes.
But still,
so when they're handing out, congressmen and handing out electoral votes, you can see the power that the 3/5 clause had. So that's why it was a compromise.
It was a compromise by the North to
Yeah.
I see. Very okay. Thank you.
Sure.
I guess I would have the question on that. Typically.
But what's interesting about the Civil War, and one of the reasons why the Civil War happened, is the 3/5 clause had ceased to do its job. It had ceased to preserve Southern power, and there was so much immigration in the North, and the birth rate was so much higher in the North that the North was politically overtaking the South, even with the 3/5 clause, even with the way the Constitution had stacked things in favor of the South. It wasn't mattering anymore. The North could elect Lincoln, who wasn't even on the ballot in the South.
Right.
So it just showed that they had achieved that kind of political power.
Were they consciously, as Trump might put it, flooding it with immigrants to get
No.
Or was that,
no.
It looks like an Ellis Island was more of a late 1800s phenomenon, wasn't
Well, the Irish were already, with the potato famine, they were already coming in
by the 1850s.
Particularly in the 1850s. Germans, there were a lot of Germans coming in, and they were all going to where the work was, which was in the industrialized North. No one was going to go to the agrarian South.
Right, and that West kept pushing at first Ohio and then to Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So thus getting us to Civil War, where the last of it.
Yeah, and what's interesting, because my book actually is about, it's 20, 25 years prior to the Civil War, but you can see it's these issues that are about to come to a head.
Yes, so let's talk about, before we get into the book, did you, how did you go from English and country to history at 38?
I was working a day job doing marketing, and I decided I wanted to go back to school. I wanted to go back just for my own edification, to start taking classes at Portland State. And I got interested in history. I think that was a lot of what I was reading in my spare time. So I went and took some history courses and ended up getting laid off from that job, going to school full time, getting another bachelor's in history, getting a master's degree in history. And this book was originally, a large portion of it was originally my thesis for my master's degree. So this book has a very long history in and of itself of a project.
Your bachelor's was in what area of history?
U.S. history.
And then
my master's degree, my bachelor was just all over the place because that's just the way they design it. My master's was in the history of the American West.
Okay.
But with an emphasis on Oregon, which is not considered part of the American West by most American West historians. Do not consider Oregon to fit in with the West.
And why is that?
It's very interesting because there's too much water here. They define the West like by its aridity, by so think of California, Arizona, Nevada,
does
Utah.
Washington fit more?
No, the Pacific Northwest is usually sort of bracketed off as something weird, and not because so much of the story of the American West is about water. And irrigation and the moving of water. You think of Los Angeles, the movie Chinatown, about so you think of that. So Oregon we have too much water. So it's a different
Eastern Oregon and Eastern Washington.
Well, that's very true. Absolutely, and they would definitely fit far more into that narrative. But
essentially, you think in the valley and along the Willamette, Columbia.
It's the Oregon that matters.
But it's a weird. I mean, that's why I enjoy studying it, because it is sort of understudied, and it is sort of an anomaly in the Pacific Northwest. Is sort of an anomaly in the West.
And you enjoy living here, then I take it.
Yeah.
So you.
It's become sort of a habit living here, I guess.
I know the feeling. Well, okay. So James D. Saules.
Yes.
With some question over the origin of his name.
Yes.
Into it. So let's talk about the era that we think he was born at then.
Yeah, he would have been most likely born around 1805. And as far as his hometown on a crew member list of a whaling ship was New Haven, Connecticut. So I don't know if he was born there or if that's just where he probably lived in a boarding house somewhere, as most sailors would have, but he was based out of Connecticut. And he would have been born at a time when slavery, many people thought that slavery might be on its way out, just naturally fade out in the United States. And there were a lot of enslaved people being manumitted and freed.
There was this, Jordy had this, that calendar, I don't know if the poet or artist you worked with, right, Jamila? My lovely wife Jamila in the background there, but I forget his name, but at one page there was a timeline, and it shows how in 1803 the Dutch were abolishing African slavery, and in 1804 the first slaves are arriving into North Carolina, and so there's this, which is just, I suppose, that town of North Carolina. There's probably a lot of slave trade already going throughout the states at that point, but that Europe was already moving away from it.
England.
American South was almost trying to hold on.
Well, it was because of cotton. Yeah. It was because prior to the cotton boom, slavery wasn't as economically feasible as other labor systems in a lot of places. It didn't die out in the North, did any sort of humanitarianism. It died out in the North because it wasn't economically, it didn't make economic sense anymore. But with the advent of the cotton gin and cotton production throughout the South and slavery.
I guess what I'm getting is why would that also prevent that it's the same principles playing out in the North also happened in Europe at that point then? That Europe...
Well, Europe were farming out. They would farm out slavery basically to the Caribbean and
So they
and the United States. Yeah, so it was easy. Well, yeah, I mean, England banned slavery in 1830s, but they were taking a lot of cotton from the United States at the same time. So
colonialism.
Yes, exactly. So they were able to wash their hands of slavery while still enjoying the fruits of slavery, as was the North at the exact same time.
Okay. So once again, humanitarianism, not deep in European history yet, but
well, there were some humanity. I mean, there were some true reformers in that period, but they were a small minority.
Well, and so James D. Saules, 1805-ish.
Yeah.
Prior to John Brown and a lot of the abolitionism, then he's born into that era of America. So he's getting into his 20s by the 25s, 30s.
Yeah.
Andrew Jackson era, you imagine.
Yes. But he was a sailor, so he was really. He lived a far more international life than most people in the United States at the time would have lived. So he was a whaler, and he was later on a naval expedition that traveled throughout the world, really. So he'd been all over the world. So it makes his story very different. But the thing to understand is how common it was for free black men, to work in the maritime industry. It was the number one employer of free black men in antebellum America.
Okay.
So it was the worst job you could have. If you were a white person, that was the lowest rung of society would have worked on a sailing ship. It was the best job that a free black person could get.
Was that a motivation in antebellum South for slaves trying to get away with that? That was, they had to say.
Well, I mean, if you look at so many narratives, Frederick Douglass, Harriet Jacobs, so many narratives of slaves escaping to freedom, they usually pose as a sailor, or they disguise themselves as a sailor. They somehow get mixed in with the crew of a ship, because the crews of these ships, of sailing ships at this time, would have been 20-30% black. So if you read Moby Dick, that becomes very evident that these ships were multi-ethnic, multicultural, multinational.
Is that the nature of the seas in a way?
Yeah.
The sailing spirit. Because if you're sailing to various islands of different ethnicities, you probably want a boat that represents not just a bunch of white people.
Well, it's just whoever you can get. You know, people are constantly deserting from these ships, and everywhere you go, you have to substitute those people you lost at the last. All the people who ran away at the last port, you got to get new folks. So you end up high turnover. And so, yeah, you end up, but again, it's the nature of colonialism, this mercantile colonialism of, commerce was taking people all over the world to go get the goodies from out in the South Pacific and bring them back. And along with that stuff came people as well. So.
And now they're working on Afghanistan. Well, on that note, we're going to take a quick little break. But Kenny, it is so great talking to you. I hope we can go a little bit further into more of this. This is wonderful. We're with Kenneth Coleman, author of Dangerous Subjects. Pick up your copy, available at Powell's Books.
Time to pay some bills. 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 constipating now.
You know, there's things probably I shouldn't talk about, but let me tell you something. There's some things out there that you just don't want to deal with. And so mainly I just reserve my time to sit around and drinking Safford Brothers Downtown Blend Taste of City coffee. You know, that's what I do. But one of the other things I do, sadly, I mean, it's a good thing, but I gotta pick up after my dog. And let me tell you something. The thing that I can't stand is cold poo, okay? Now, what I'm saying is, if you just pick it up immediately, it's warm, it feels good in your hands. But if you leave it laying around, it gets cold, and there's nothing worse than cold poo. So forget about all that. Get yourself a cup of Safford Brothers Downtown Blend Taste of City coffee. It's always good. You're gonna love it.
We can talk about this later.
No, we can talk about it now. We're gonna go in. We're here talking about the author of Dangerous Subjects, but we've side ramped off a little bit in that conversation. Your time in Texas, because I can get us back.
Okay.
But you're saying one of the things I always think of in Dallas is the Kennedy assassination, and you're saying that wasn't. That or John F. Kennedy and his legacy in general wasn't discussed.
No, not a lot of interest, not a lot of discussion about it. I mean, they did have, I think they had like the sort of a conspiracy theory museum nearby Dealey Plaza.
Yeah. But off a little.
But I think they dealt in all sorts of conspiracy theories. But it's a beautiful museum there. The book depository and is all preserved and very well done. But no, nobody really spoke of it. It wasn't anything that people really liked to recall. Somebody told me where Oswald was buried, somewhere in Arlington. They claimed to know where he was buried, but I never went to the.
To keep that hidden.
Yeah.
Well, and
Jack Ruby. People talk more about Jack Ruby because he was a local character, club owner.
What did they say about Jack Ruby?
Oh, just that he was a man, with mob connections, man about town. But a lot of women, a lot of bouffant wearing women claim to have dated Jack Ruby back in the day. So
he ran the strip club down there.
Yeah.
Was he? No, he wasn't played by Ed Asner in the movie, was he? It was. Did Joe Pesci play him?
No.
Who the hell played Jack Ruby?
Joe Pesci played the guy with the big eyebrows.
Yes. David Ferry was that? That was Joe Pesci and Gary Oldman. Oh, I need to know who played Jack Ruby now. It's going to drive me nuts. Probably.
Was it
Bob
Danny Aiello?
I
don't know. For some reason.
That's that period.
I just wanted
Danny Aiello was everywhere at that point.
Yes.
92. But to tie it back to our earlier conversation, I had a friend, I can't remember if it was my cousin Jimmy or perhaps Norman Sylvester, someone was talking about being at a New Orleans museum. It was my cousin Jimmy. And across the street from this amazing, cool World War II thing was a southern, like the plantations or some kind of heroic thing of the South in the Confederacy. It was a Confederacy museum, and there was not a single word of slavery anywhere in that. That to me, I find it fascinating the disconnect between things that are so obvious on one level, and yet there's still this thing where people want to disassociate.
Sure.
I suppose it's like Hitler in Germany, right? There's a generation of Germans that just don't. I don't even want to talk about it, right? Is it an embarrassment of history that happens, or is it more of a defensiveness, or a combination of both?
I think it gets to the question of history versus heritage, whereas history is, a critical investigation of the past, whereas heritage are the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. And I think that's where a lot of museums fall into the category of heritage.
Oh.
You know, putting up a statue in a park, that's heritage. This is the past that makes us feel good about ourselves.
Right.
The Alamo, that's an interesting thing bringing up Texas. The Alamo, you'll see no mention of slavery at the Alamo, but I mean that was one of the main issues with Texas. Had Mexico had declared slavery illegal, and at that time Texas was part of Mexico, and there was they were.
Is that how they became the Lone Star State then? Was there?
Well, there was they were bringing slaves. They were bringing slaves into Texas, and so basically running cotton plantations in Texas, which was against. That wasn't the only reason that the Mexicans wanted wrote in there, but it was certainly an issue. Slavery was an issue that was illegal in Mexico, and yet it was being practiced in Texas, which was part of Mexico at the time. So I mean, slavery is front and center in all of U.S. history. But maybe not these heritage, centers we're talking about. But I mean, it's.
Well, and so I think when you get into heritage, that's where you probably start talking about timing, and it's all things have their moments, and then new moments arise. Let's deviate back into the black exclusionary laws. So James D. Saules is what brings him to Oregon. What brings him?
Well, he had been a cook on a naval expedition. For some reason, he was in Peru. I don't know why. He probably deserted from a whaling expedition, was in Peru, signed on a U.S. naval expedition, was with the expedition for about a year and a half, was present when they discovered Antarctica, went to Australia, went to, all the sort of islands, Fiji, places like that, islands, very obscure islands that probably to this day few non-indigenous people had even been to, was involved in massacres there, and then finally his ship wrecked right off of Astoria. The ship he was in wrecked off of Astoria, and he and two other black men deserted from the expedition at that point. The rest of the expedition got a new ship, and they left and went on and finished up the expedition.
And how old was he at that point?
He probably would have been pushing 40, probably.
So he was
he was probably mid 30s at the time, which I think probably might have explained why he deserted. He might have. I mean, that's a rough life, and as he's getting older, it was probably more difficult. He fell in love with a Chinook woman living probably on the other side of the northern side of the Columbia, the village up there, and
did he meet her after being here for a while?
No, I think he met her I think that might have been what precipitated the desertion.
It's a love story.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, we know. Unfortunately, we know nothing about her, which is that's the difficulty of doing this kind of history. We know very little about James Saules, but I mean. Indigenous women are invisible by and large.
Women, when you talk Chinook, you really get into a wide array of different tribes.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's a. Because
they all spoke Chinook, but every couple miles is a different tribe.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
The language of the river. When did he pass away?
Again, not quite sure. Probably sometime in the 1850s.
Okay,
the rumors were that he.
War.
No, I don't believe he.
Oregon statehood is 1850.
1859.
59.
Yeah.
59. So he dies 9 years prior to state.
Or who knows? Again, not quite sure where he just sort of disappears. He disappears from the historic record somewhere around 1851.
Okay.
But which isn't to say he died then. He just didn't show up. More and more people were moving into Oregon. He being a black man working on the river in the 1840s, he stood out like a sore thumb. But as Oregon was becoming more populated, he probably And I think he probably went up north to Washington, where things were a lot more hospitable to people of color than they were south of the southern side of the Columbia.
Really?
Yeah, most.
Was that part of the British heritage, or?
To some extent, I think so. A lot of black people went to the northern side of the Columbia.
Okay, and
by a lot I mean a few. There weren't that many coming out here just due to the hostility. But those who did usually went to the north side.
Well, so the black exclusion laws, how did they come about?
Well, the thing is, there had been the people who came to Oregon on the Oregon Trail were mostly from the Midwest. So they'd come from places, most of which had black exclusion laws at some point in their history. Most of those black exclusion laws were against runaway enslaved people. They were worried about runaways coming into their communities. They were worried also that slavery might be ended and there might be like a refugee sort of situation of people coming in. So
immigration thing kind of rears its head.
Yes. So that was. I mean, there had been black exclusion laws throughout the country. In the South, they had them about these sailors. They didn't want the sailors, like Saules, coming off the ships and inciting. Yes, and then there had been Denmark VC. There are these stories of people who attempted to use those sailors to smuggle in information and.
Were the sailors a part of the railroad, the Underground Railroad?
I'm sure some. I mean, that would have been part of this of the system. I'm sure.
Communication.
Yeah.
Smuggling.
Yeah.
So Oregon becomes a state in 1859.
Yeah. So in terms of black exclusion. The first black exclusion laws passed in 1844, partly inspired likely by James Saules, got in an altercation with a settler named Charles E. Pickett, who was from the Deep South, pro-slavery settler. He got in an altercation with him. We're not quite sure why, but he got... Saules got a group of Indians and allegedly threatened the life of this white settler with these, saying that he was going to get these Indians to...
What part of the state is this? In Portland? Or?
This would have been around Oregon City.
Okay.
Yeah, so Willamette Falls area. That was...
I saw you hit McLaughlin is around at this point.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
And
yeah.
Did McLaughlin and Saules know each other? Or?
I have no idea if they crossed paths. Saules was a riverman and was working, bringing people and freight along the Columbia.
So a ferry run or something.
Yeah. So I mean, it's totally possible. It's totally possible. Just given that was the major highway at the time, so he was would have been a fixture on that. But yeah, so that's the first black exclusion law is 1844, and that's before Oregon is part of the United States. Oregon is just the Oregon Trail. Migrants came out and started their own government. Mm-hmm. And
what's the thing out there in Charbonneau?
Yeah, is Shampooey. The Shampooey meeting. So yeah, they started in anticipation that eventually the United States would make Oregon part
state. Which at that point we were Washington and Idaho, right? Wasn't that all kind of the...
Yeah, and parts of Montana and even Wyoming. So it was a vast area. Yeah. But it's still, at that point, it was still under joint occupation between the United States and Great Britain.
Right.
So
with the line with the Columbia.
The Columbia was, in essence, that was the line between British influence and American influence.
And what period are we talking about?
Well, this ended in 1846. Okay. So it was under joint occupation from, I believe, 1819 up until 1846, but it didn't.
Isn't the War of 1812 part of that? Isn't that how that?
Well, I mean, there's a bit of that factors into the fur trade, but it was all just it would have been in the aftermath that they're trying to come up with some sort of agreement over what to do with Oregon, because Britain wanted to get the furs and the United States wanted Oregon as a gateway to trade with China. So those were the main political interests at work there.
And so the additional black exclusion law. So there was
every time, yes, they were the first, and then once Oregon became a territory in 1848, they passed another black exclusion law. So it seems almost at every time there's another milestone, another black exclusion law gets passed.
We're not a slave state, but
yeah. So again, the state constitution bans slavery, but also bans any black person from living in Oregon and owning property, which is
Saules was here for that, or he passed away.
He probably was dead by that point, which I go into it somewhat in the book, but I really focus on that earlier period.
So what I've heard some stories of black Americans, Oregonians, actually living amidst that. A barkeep in Salem, I think, up till the 1800s. There was an occasional individual African American that could survive here up till maybe. Or
yeah, no. I mean, the thing is, the black exclusion laws were only ever used once to exclude any specific person, which is Jacob Vanderpool ran a hotel or a saloon, and he was forced to leave. They tried to force a man named Obie Francis to leave, but he had a lot of powerful friends, and they managed to protect him. He got enough people in power to protect. But I think these laws were more symbolic. They had more symbolic power than legal power. And then after the 14th Amendment, these laws are completely unconstitutional. They remain on Oregon's books as symbolically, but they're unconstitutional.
And how late did they remain on the books?
Well, I mean, in various forms. I don't have the information in front of me. I know that black exclusion was in the Constitution until the 20s, and then I don't think it was removed entirely until the early 2000s. Like the actual language, some of the final bits of language to get it all removed or redacted.
I'm going to be getting to the point here in a second. One last question. This has been so fun. Thank you for all this info. The Great Migration and its impact on Oregon. Do you have any comment about that?
So which Great Migration are we talking about?
Well, I've heard two phases. One with the early phase, like 1900s to 40s, and then the big one being post-World War II Vanport.
Yeah. No, I only bring that up because they talk about the early days of the Oregon Trail as the Great Migration as well. Oh. So that terminology gets used in Oregon history.
Oh,
so
no,
it can get a little.
Talking about the black version.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean that. It originally begins as a southern to northern migration.
The industrialization.
Yes, in
Reconstruction.
Yeah, and particularly in sort of the teens but for the American West, I mean, the American West was transformed by World War II. And not just, I mean. You had suddenly cities in California, in the Bay Area, and Los Angeles, tiny towns suddenly became, 100, 200, 300,000 people overnight. Right. As with this demand for wartime labor, and yeah, so I mean, you had people coming from the South. Not only, I mean, you had African American people. You also had white Southerners coming to work as well, and so you're recreating some of those same social dynamics. You're just, you're in the Tri-Cities area now with a bunch of, Southerners and African Americans transplanted there to work in the wartime industry. But yeah, Vanport's at the heart, at least in Oregon. Yeah. The Kaiser shipyards, Vanport. That's at the heart of the story, because prior to that, the number of African Americans Oregon was minuscule. Partially, I mean, there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, part of it is the legacy of those laws, but that demand for labor, for the first time, Oregon was forced to confront that demand for labor and bringing. And Oregon's always been a very parochial place, always a very conservative provincial place that doesn't care for outsiders.
Right.
So
and this sort of Protestant, we do things as we will type of attitude.
Yeah.
But at the same time, in my studies with Tales of Old Portland, I've been finding that there is this small black community that forms by the 1890s. And
yes.
It's happening in Portland.
Around the railroad industry.
Yes. What did have your studies taken you into that period? And also as well as the rodeo. I've seen some things about the black cowboys that were showing up out there.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on that. I'm really a historian of sort of early colonial Oregon, sort of pre-Civil War historian. So all I know about, I know about the Golden West Hotel. I know, I know about the
Golden West Hotel.
Well, that was a black run hotel for the railroad. I mean, that would for the porters who would come into town would stay there, and that was that area around Old Town. That was the original sort of black area.
As well as Chinese.
Yes, though Chinatown was originally on the other side of Burnside. It moved after the flood in the 1890s. Chinatown moves over to its present location. So it used to be over more 2nd Avenue over there on the other side of Burnside on the south side.
So the north was more the black.
Just that one around the train station. Yeah, around the train station, and that was just due to segregation. That was the one area.
Right.
But you'd had black run businesses there. So it was a small neighborhood, and
the newspaper started, I think, and then whatchamacallit, it's the Scanner, I think, some origins. I'm getting beat up by my audience here. I'll tell you, Kenny, it's been great having you here, and one of the things I like to bring up is how our mayors run the town. There's a lot of historic incompetency with the mayors. Now, this current mayor, Ted Wheeler's been doing some interesting thing with Antifa and the Pride Boys or something like that.
Hey.
Oh, it's my lovely wife, Jamila. Hey, honey, what's up?
Hey, say goodnight, Jeff.
Oh. Good night, Jeff.
This goes to Peter Fonda.